Hi everyone, today I'll tell you about the 2007 horror film Dead Silence. Jamie and Lisa Ashen were just doing their household chores when someone slipped a mysterious package under their door. It had no return address. Inside, they found a creepy ventriloquist doll, so eerie that Lisa immediately remembered a childhood rhyme about the witch Mary Shaw and her dolls. Well, a doll is just a doll, they thought. The couple was about to have dinner, so Jamie ran out to a Chinese restaurant to grab some food, while Lisa stayed home with the unsettling gift, covering it with a sheet. Suddenly, all sounds in the house disappeared. Total silence. Then, a faint giggle came from under the sheet. When Lisa approached the bed, the doll suddenly threw the sheet over her and pulled her in. Jamie returned home and noticed that the kettle was still boiling. Then he heard his wife calling him from the bedroom. But when he entered, he saw Lisa under the sheet. Her mouth was wide open, and her tongue was gone. Detective Jim Lipton took on the case. He didn't believe Jamie's story about the cursed doll being connected to his wife's death, but he also had no proof that Jamie was guilty. So he let him go. Back in his apartment, Jamie examined the doll's box and found something strange written under the lining. Mary Shaw, the ventriloquist, and her doll, Billy. That name pointed directly to his hometown, Ravens Fair. Trying to make sense of what happened, Jamie took the doll and drove to Ravens Fair, where his father, Edward Ashen, still lived. But when he arrived, he discovered that his paralyzed father wasn't alone. He now had a new wife, Ella, whom Jamie had never even heard of. Edward greeted his son from a wheelchair. Jamie asked him about Mary Shaw and her dolls, who were once considered witches in the town. But Edward and Ella brushed it off, saying it was just an old children's ghost story. Every small town has its share of superstitions. Later, Jamie stopped by the mortician's to choose a coffin for his wife and then checked into a hotel. That night, as he lay in bed, the room fell completely silent. Suddenly, the doll Billy came to life, and in the dark corner appeared the ghostly figure of Mary Shaw. At that moment, Jamie realized that this was no mere superstition. After his wife's funeral, Jamie noticed an old woman with gray hair wandering through the cemetery. He followed her to an abandoned grave and discovered she was the mortician's deranged wife. She told him that his wife had been killed by the witch Mary Shaw, and that he must bury the doll himself. Jamie went to the forgotten grave and saw that it belonged to Mary Shaw. He took the doll from the hotel and brought it to her burial site, surrounded by tombstones bearing the names of her other dolls, one of them being Billy. He buried the doll there, but before he covered it with dirt, it turned its head toward him one last time. Later, Jamie found the doll again in his hotel room. It turned out Detective Lipton had dug it up, believing it was evidence, and had been secretly following Jamie all along. Jamie explained that the marionette once belonged to Mary Shaw, the witch who, according to legend, would rip out the tongues of anyone who screamed in her presence. He had only returned the doll to where it came from, the same place it was sent from on the night his wife was killed. The detective still didn't believe any of it and took Billy with him. The next day, he left town, leaving the doll behind in his room. Jamie later stole the marionette back and went to the mortician's wife for answers, but she refused to speak. Her husband, Henry, finally opened up and told Jamie the story of how he once met Mary Shaw. Long ago, Ravens Fair had a small theater where the famous ventriloquist Mary Shaw used to perform. During one of Mary Shaw's performances with her doll, Billy, a boy named Michael interrupted her, shouting that he could see her lips moving. Mary quickly denied it by speaking in perfect unison with Billy, her voice and the doll's voice blending seamlessly, leaving the audience amazed. But just 2 weeks later, young Michael disappeared without a trace. Not long after, Mary Shaw herself was murdered. In her will, she requested to be buried along with her dolls, and to have her body made up to look like a ventriloquist dummy. Henry, the mortician's son, once saw her that way when he peeked into his father's workshop out of curiosity. Mary was buried, but soon mysterious murders began to plague the town. Every victim was found with their tongue ripped out. Henry said everyone knew. She would never stop killing those who scream. Jamie decides to visit the abandoned theater where Mary once performed. There, he discovers her old notebook filled with sketches and notes describing how to create the perfect doll. Among her belongings, he also finds a newspaper clipping about the missing boy, Michael Ashen, realizing they share the same last name. Meanwhile, Henry catches his wife talking to Billy. Furious, he grabs the doll, unsure what to do with it. Suddenly he hears his wife's voice calling him from the closet where she liked to sit. When Henry opens the door, it turns out to be a trap. Mary Shaw appears, and as he screams, she rips out his tongue. Jamie returns to his father and asks who Michael Ashen really was. Edward explains that the missing boy was his great-uncle, the same Michael whose disappearance the Ashen family had blamed on Mary Shaw. The townspeople had hunted her down, forced her to scream, and cut out her tongue. Since then, her spirit had been killing the Ashen bloodline, their wives, children, and anyone connected to the family. Angry that his father hid the truth, Jamie prepares to leave but runs into Detective Lipton, who tells him that someone has stolen Billy, and that all 100 of Mary Shaw's dolls are missing from their graves. At that moment, Ella appears and tells Jamie that he's got a call. On the line is Henry, who claims to have proof of Jamie's innocence and asks him to meet at the old theater. Jamie and the detective rush there and discover Mary Shaw's secret workshop. Inside are all her dolls, except Billy. Hanging nearby is another marionette, crafted from the body of the kidnapped Michael Ashen. Suddenly the dolls begin turning their heads, and a clown puppet speaks in Mary's voice, revealing that she used Michael's body because to make the perfect doll, she needed real human material. She also tells Jamie that she killed his wife because she was pregnant, carrying the last remaining descendant of the Ashen family. Right after those words, Mary Shaw herself appears behind the clown. The detective shoots at her, but she vanishes, only to reappear through other dolls. Jamie decides the only way to stop her is to burn them all. As they try to escape, the platform they're running on collapses. Detective Lipton screams, and Mary kills him mid-fall. She then turns on Jamie, but he manages to cover his mouth just in time. Silent, he survives and escapes from the burning theater. Jamie drives to Henry's house, hoping to find the last marionette, Billy, but finds Henry dead in his wife's arms. She tells him that his father, Edward Ashen, took the doll. When Jamie arrives at his father's mansion, a heavy silence fills the air. Mary Shaw appears once again, but retreats when he throws Billy into the fireplace. In the dim light, Jamie notices his father sitting motionless in his wheelchair. As he steps closer, horror strikes. Edward Ashen is dead. His body has been turned into a ventriloquist's puppet, controlled all this time by Ella. It turns out she was the one who spoke to Jamie on the phone in Henry's voice and sent him the package with the doll, luring the last Ashen back home. And finally, we learn the truth. The perfect doll Mary Shaw always dreamed of creating wasn't Edward Ashen. It was Ella, whose body she now controls from within. Upon realizing this, Jamie can no longer contain his horror and becomes Mary Shaw's final victim. And that's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you want more stories like this.